Great. We can go ahead and open June 10th, 2025, Littleton Conservation Commission, and we are hearing this evening via Zoom. So let's go ahead and get going. What I'd like to do is to start with the approval of minutes. I know it's been a little bit, but hopefully everyone had a chance to read both sets. I'd like to go ahead and start with May 13th, 2025. Does anyone have any changes that they would like to make? I believe I just had one or two. Anyone have any ahead of me?
Just a couple of minor ones for this. Under the public hearing for 64 Beaverbrook Road, the third sentence in it says the commission asked that the wetland crossing comply. So I just removed the asked. And then down below under, let's see, under the discussion of the conservation parcel U17-208, it says Mr. Pearson noted that if the commissioner votes to approve, it should just be the commission. And towards the end of that paragraph, I just have, let's see, when it talks about the property was deeded to John McSweeney by Daniel McSweeney by deed recorded at, it should really be within book 12395, page 13. And that's all that I had.
And then, Tim, I just had one on page 3, second line. It says commission came to a consensus that they do not have an issue with the dock being stored with the buffer zones. It should be add the word within the buffer zones. Does anyone else have any changes or suggestions for May 13, 2025?
No.
If not, may I have someone to move to accept the minutes as amended?
I move that we accept the minutes as amended.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Carl. All those in favor?
Roll call vote. Michael.
Michael Livingston, aye.
Carl.
I'm Albert Guy.
Sarah.
Sarah Seward, aye.
And was Ed here a second ago?
He was. That's okay. We still quorum.
Okay. And I'll also vote aye. So we have unanimous in favor.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let's go ahead and move on to the May 27, 2025 minutes for conservation. Does anyone have any changes that they would like to make or suggested changes?
I've got a handful of them. So let's see, under Conservation Commissioner term expirations, the very last sentence, it says ultimately, it says while the select board ultimately makes the appointment, then the candidate, it should have an S on the end, candidates would be sworn in at the town clerk's office. Under the next paragraph, it says CPC project updates. It says that I updated the commission, it's got a capital T on the that the Frog Pond invasive plant control, I took out the application in Frog Pond, got rid of that. So it just reads that the Frog Pond invasive plant control and walkway projects were approved at town meeting. And then under the public meeting, RDA for 8 Cricket Lane, the second to last sentence, it says that Sarah suggested a site, and then it doesn't say visit next to it, so site visit, so the commission can confirm. Let's see, for 76 Hartwell Avenue, it said the commission was notified after the fact that the public notice did not run in the newspaper. I just said the public notice for this hearing did not run in the newspaper.
Right.
The applicant not paying, and then I just said bill in time. And then I just added a quick sentence. The hearing will be rescheduled for and formally opened on June 10th. And sorry, I just had a couple more.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I've got, yep, keep going.
Under requested request for amended order of conditions for Forge Pond.
Yep.
I have about halfway down, the Clean Lakes Committee is currently going through the approval process with DEP. Mr. Pearson stated that it says state national heritage. And then the next sentence down, conditions were discussed that the order will be valid for 1 year. And I just put and would require annual reporting. And then the very last sentence, I've got that I motion to issue an amended order of conditions to include the use of herbicides and diver-assisted suction harvesting. I put a comma there, and then it says subject to reporting, and I put and state dredging permitting. So I know we had identified that. Then the next, continued public hearing for Blood Road. The second sentence in, it says any disturbed areas resulting from the removal of the poles will be reseeded with the New England roadside. I wasn't sure if this was supposed to be roadside mix. It says roadside matrix.
I think mix, yeah.
Mix, yeah. And then it says all excess soils removed from the utility trench will be removed from the site and stored at, and the has a capital T for the Littleton Electric Light and Water Department. And then get rid of the S on water departments. And then finally, the very last notice of intent, 65 Bruce Street. About halfway down, it says the commission suggests pulling the erosion controls. It's got one L. Just going to add another L in there. The commission raised concerns about where materials and removed fill will be stored. It's got a question mark. We can just make a period. And then the very last sentence for the next meeting, the commission has just got the capital T and the again. And we're good after that.
Okay. I would ask Andrew if you could forward those to Tim. I had one more. If we can make note of the adjournment time on the last page as well, if we can kind of add that in. Does anyone else have anything that they would like to add to those changes? If not, do we have a motion to accept as amended?
I'll make a motion that the commission approve the meeting minutes of May 27th as amended.
Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Michael.
All right, roll call vote. Carl.
I'm Albrecht, aye.
Ed? Oh, Ed, I think you're on mute.
Yep, Ed, you are. There you go.
I'm having some technical difficulties, I think. But in any case, Ed Foltz, aye.
Michael?
Michael Livingston, aye.
Sarah?
Yep, Sarah Seward, aye.
And myself, aye. It's unanimous.
Okay, great. Thank you for doing that. Okay, administrative discussions. Request for a certificate of compliance, 26 Deer Run Road, DEP number 204-0884. Tim, can you speak to that?
Sure. I actually have Dana here, who's going to run over some of the things with this request. So I got this request and noticed on my site walk a couple disparities between the as-built plan and the existing conditions. Notably, the shed location. There's an area designated as supposed to be crushed, either crushed stone or crushed gravel, and that is existing patio. The driveway on the approved plan is gravel existing. It's paved, and the footprint kind of extends a little outside of where it was approved. And then there's also an existing paver pathway towards the outer edge of the 100-foot buffer. I have the plan here. If you'd like, I could share my screen.
And I think you all will notice that in your email packets from David Ross and Associates, they had sent along 3 photos and some notations. Is there someone from Ross to speak to this, or?
No, it's just me here today.
Okay. And Tim, do you have the photos of all the areas in question in addition to the deck? I mean, the bottom of the deck?
I don't have any additional photos other than the ones that were provided by Ross.
Okay. And you have the applicant on?
Yep. That's Dana. He's here.
Okay. Dana, do you want to speak to all these changes from what was originally approved?
Yeah, so the driveway, to be honest, I thought it was all outside of the buffer zone. It all slopes away from the lake, and I just didn't occur to me. It wasn't in the original budget for us, and turned out to be something we were able to do, and it didn't occur to me that would need to be run by you guys. And then the crushed stone area, I that's something that I didn't know was proposed in the original plan. If you look at it, it would make no sense to put a crushed stone area right in front of the door. So I kind of was relying upon David Ross to not do stuff like that. I'm not a civil engineer or a professional in this area, but it was already a concrete area, so why I would take the area right in front of my door and make it crushed stone is a little bit peculiar to me.
Photos of the driveway.
What was that?
Do you have photos of the driveway?
I think,
Or is there a plan?
I think it was updated on the package that he sent over.
I can share it.
Yep, if you want to share that.
Yeah, give me a second.
And then do we have photos of the patio prior to the new concrete?
I do not, Sarah, no.
Okay.
So you guys can see my screen, right?
Yep.
Perfect. So after I talked to Dan Wolf over at Ross about these deviations in the plan, he did move, and the plan's a little confusing because it's overlaying the approved plan with the original as-built and then the deviations that got corrected on the latest version of the as-built, so it's a little confusing. But you can see right here is the location of the new shed or the relocated shed. The approved location is right here. The previous location, it used to be right here before it was relocated. This area right here is the area of crushed stone that is existing patio right now. I will note there is a little area. I noticed it when walking on the side of the house under the patio that is crushed stone right about here. I'm not sure the extent of how large that area is, mainly because I couldn't see all of it. I'm trying to see where the gravel driveway. The main expansion of the driveway further than what was approved is it goes a little bit back into this area to the right of the house over by the septic, whereas it was only approved to be about this boundary right here. And again, I'm sorry, this is super confusing. It's a really
I think for the commissioners, with it would have to be a colored plan to be able to truly understand the before and after and the impacted areas. Commissioners, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, to me, I think we need we don't have an updated plan showing where the actual location of these are, do we? Because I mean, like Tim was struggling trying to.
Yeah, it's some of the locations are updated, but it's tough because there's, I've got 3 locations for sheds on here, so it's a little.
Yeah. So I appreciate Tim trying to do this. It's not Tim's job to try and go through these plans when they're not colored or you don't have someone representing them. To Mr. Gilpatrick, I would ask that either you or your engineer submit something that's colored and can present all the changes so we know what is impervious versus pervious as well.
He outlined the changes in the letter that he wrote very specifically.
Yeah, but they're not shown on the plans from what I can tell. Tim, at least we can't tell where they are.
Well, so I mean, I can show you where they are.
But the thing is,
what are the? And sorry, I'm looking at this and trying to look. What are the runoff numbers in terms of? Are we now into stormwater management because it's now paved? with the proximity to the wetlands?
Are you asking me this?
Yes.
All of the pavement slopes away from the from the lake, and I would say 98% of it is not in the buffer.
And you're referring to the 100-foot buffer or the 0 to 50?
The 100-foot buffer. I'm outside of the 100-foot buffer
Okay.
on 98% of it. There's a small strip next to the house that is in the 50 to 100 that I didn't really think of.
Okay.
So-
Yep.
I think you can, so this note right here says as-built paved driveway right here. It's this dotted line that runs all the way up. Actually, it looks like it runs a little bit over the septic to the side of the house and outside here. So the area within the 100 would be this area right here.
Correct.
And the other impervious, I believe it's impervious, is this paver walkway. Dana, do you know, is that an impervious paver walkway or is it pervious?
It's pervious. It's just
It's
pavers.
pervious.
They lay right on the ground. I don't. Is that something that I would need to run by you guys?
Is it within the 100-foot buffer?
Rocks, yes. Pavers are within the 100-foot buffer, but they're just rocks sitting on sand.
Right. So I think just to understand, so there are some pavers that allow water to penetrate, and then there's some that are literally locked in that is meant for water to shed over them. And so that's why the commission always asks that what type of pavers they are.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. No, these are there's cracks in them that the water gets and seeps into.
Right.
I put them down.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioners, questions?
Wasn't built to what was originally agreed.
I agree, Ed. We're looking at something that wasn't approved.
I'm with Sarah. There needs to be a before and after. You know, what was
This is
plan?
extremely close. I mean, I don't know if you guys have ever
Yeah.
built a house, but it's very difficult to think of all these things in the middle of all the chaos that's going on.
I'm not arguing that point at all.
We didn't touch anywhere. We left an existing stone wall. We didn't go anywhere near the lake in terms of disturbing what was already there.
So what we're here to do, Mr. Kilpatrick, is to make sure that under the Wetlands Protection Act, that when you go from a gravel driveway to a paved driveway, that there's not going to be any future implications with water runoff. And so
Right,
that's
and
why
it was outlined in the letter that Dan Wolf wrote, that everything is away from the lake, tilted backwards away from the lake, all runoff.
And in a hurricane, is it all still going to go away from the lake?
And what's that?
In a hurricane, will it still all go away from the lake?
I would assume, yeah. I mean, that's the way the property is.
The way it's graded? Yeah.
and
Topography of the land,
This-
it all goes away from the lake.
I'm looking at the letter from Ross and Associates. The plan that was revised that we're looking at now was the June 2nd, 2025 as-built.
Let me confirm that, Sarah. It should be, yes, that's correct.
And the original order of conditions was issued April 10th, 2019.
Hmm.
How long has this been paved?
20, maybe 2020.
Commissioners, what would you like to do? This is still a discussion. This is a request for certificate of compliance. Would any commissioners like to go out to verify? Or ask anything else of the Gilpatricks with the plan?
It seems like Tim has already gone out and done a fairly thorough job. But the plan's really difficult for me to, it's just really hard for me to figure out what's going on.
Well, I mean, to me, it's the two deviations are the pavement on the left. Can you circle that for everybody, Tim?
Yep, give me a second here.
Or excuse me, on the right.
Oh,
So the pavement over here.
Yep. And then the square of crushed stone further towards the lake, that was that's a concrete slab now, and it was prior to the plans. But right in front of that is a sliding door. So I'm not a professional when it comes to looking at these drawings, and if I had known that was being proposed, I would have never said that was okay. That was kind of new. I was totally caught off guard when Tim brought it to my attention.
But you were the current owner when the 2019 order of conditions was issued, correct?
Correct, but I didn't realize that was being proposed in the plan. It didn't occur to me to check with the engineers that they weren't putting crushed stone in front of my door, my egress.
And then the lower, as we look at this plan on the lower right corner, the shaded block versus the square, what is that?
That's my septic tank, I believe.
so your driveway's going over the septic?
No, it's just off. Well, it's probably going over part of it.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
And okay. And that's okay with Board of Health?
I mean, I can still access. It's got all the things I need to clean it and etc.
Okay. Okay, commissioners, what we would like to do? There, you have in front of you a request for a certificate of compliance. The option is, yep, go ahead.
I just don't feel I'm in a place to vote yay.
Okay, and
That's what other commissioners say.
what are the other commissioners? What are our thoughts on this?
I think at a minimum for the file, we'd at least want something clearly delineating what was different from what was approved in the order of conditions in 2019. Because when we look back at this, it's not going to mesh. When we look at the order of conditions and the plan that was filed with the original notice of intent, it's going to look a little wavy gravy.
So you have here an as-built. What would you like to have an overlay so that you can take the 2019 and then the 2025 so that is of record with the changes, or what would you propose?
I'd like the commission to think a little bit about my wallet here when we think about all these drawings. He had to come out twice on this already.
And we understand that, but we also have to follow what we are commissioned to do.
In his opinion, these drawings were sufficient, and he's been doing this. He's been doing this a very long time, as far as I know.
I'm pretty sure that I've been doing it the same time as Dan Wolf has been doing it.
Okay.
So
We typically expect a little bit more from Ross and Associates. Been working with them for a long time. They know what we want.
they know that we would expect an overlay and a plan that is colored to denote where the buffer zone is as well.
Right.
All right, commissioners, we have to get going. So what would you like to do?
Sounds like the consensus is that we need an overlay plan or something to mark what it was originally supposed to be and what it is now.
But we've kind of
Those two areas anyway.
So we have two options. We can ask for further information, or we can take a vote on the request for certificate of compliance. If you're asking us to take a vote, we can do so.
I'm not quite clear on what is not clear on the plans, and from my vantage.
So,
I mean, there's a couple of things. Just for as an example here, we have notes: existing shed proposed or to be removed, right? And then we have another note over here on the shed in this location saying proposed relocated shed, and then another box here that says as built shed. So it's a little confusing.
Well, wait, what we proposed to move it over there, and then we moved it there.
Right, but
That's
we have a lot
right,
of
so when you have an
information on it.
as-built, you do not have proposals on as-builts.
Okay. Well, this is how they prepared it for me.
Okay, so we're going to move on. So I encourage you to talk to Ross and Associates. They can listen to this recording and they will understand what we're going. So we're not going to take a motion to vote on this at this moment. We're going to carry on to our it's now 8 o'clock. We're going to go to our 7:40 public hearing, which is a request for amended order of conditions, Long Lake Docks, DEP 204-1001 regarding dock storage. Who would like to speak to that?
I'm promoting Tim Mikulski right now.
Good evening, everybody.
Hey, Tim, sorry to keep you waiting.
All good.
So if you would like to kind of pick up where we left off at our last meeting, that would be great.
So this is actually the first,
Now, in terms of what we had asked, hadn't we asked for some information prior? Or is this sorry?
So I believe Sarah and Tim can correct me if I'm wrong. We had discussed where the docks were currently being stored. And as far as the reason for the amended order conditions, when this was voted on last year, it was a clerical error that the information that was put into the order conditions was written as it was.
Yep. So
go ahead,
Sorry.
Tim.
Yep. At the last meeting, we had a discussion about how we would like to go about this change to the language, and the commission voted that they would like to see it as a request for an amended order of conditions, specifically to go over that language that says the docks shall be stored outside of the buffer zones.
So commissioners, let's go ahead and have some discussion about this as well. And I have been asked by Diane Corey to submit into record comments and photos submitted by Rob Rounds as well. Commissioners, let's go ahead and have discussion, our thoughts on the storage and the amendment that's requested. Perhaps, Tim, if it might be easy just to do a recap of proximity to buffer zone and wetlands right now in terms of storage, and perhaps if you ever had an opportunity to look at other potential locations for them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So right now we are, Tim and I went out and measured it. I believe we're 17 feet inside of the 50 foot. To get outside the 100 foot would be pretty difficult without moving them completely off the boat ramp. As far as storage goes, historically, the docks have always been stored there, even prior to my tenure at Park and Rec, when they were the other docks that existed. It's a little difficult to put these docks kind of anywhere else right now. We did briefly discuss in one of the meetings, I think it was 2 or 3 meetings ago, storing them up towards the building where the tight tank is. We never did get any information on what the load could be put on top of that area because it is the existing septic area as well that was closed off when it failed. I know in Mr. Ronce's letter that he submitted via Diane Curry today, it was suggested that we truck not only the docks, but the boats over to the 36 King Street property, which obviously everybody can see that would probably add significant cost, as well as Park and Rec does not have the means to be able to do that. If we were to move the docks over to the main parking lot, same thing, it would take up parking in the main parking lot as well. Because one of the points that was brought up was it does take up parking spaces on the boat ramp. Most of the time the dock is stored there. The boat ramp is closed for the season. The boat ramp gets locked up as soon as we get first ice on the lake. So, you know, for a very limited amount of time, the dock takes up space. And to the point of one of the conservation commissioners last week meeting, you know, the dock is stored on the resource for most of the season. We're currently going through the Chapter 91 water licensing through the state of Massachusetts to put that in, which will give us our 15-year permit to have the docks at Long Lake, which is the new process that was established this year. And currently, you know, there is no other solution for the actual storage of the docks.
Tim, is there a process when they're taken out of the water to have them cleaned prior to stored to remove?
We actually pressure wash them before we put them in, not before we take them out, because they sit all year, or they sit the couple months that they do on the boat ramp. So that's when we clean the docks.
I guess I was thinking when we pull them out, if they have any invasives on them, if they're pressure washed when they come out and when they're sitting in the resource area was my question on that.
So I'm not an expert on invasives. However, I can tell you that when we pull the docks out, the only thing that's on them is a little bit of green and brown algae. There's no zebra mussels. There's no plant matter. That part of the reason that we went with this system is the plastic is extremely, not thinking of the word right now. It's very resistant to anything growing on it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. Okay, commissioners, questions or comments on this?
So yeah, I just had a couple of questions, especially digging into Rob's very well thought out email this afternoon. I was just curious, when it comes to the new material that was authorized by CPC this past time around, what would the footprint expand to with the new dock material added to the existing site?
It's approximately the same amount of material. So it would extend almost to the end of the that railing that extends to like Meadowbrook. It would essentially be 2 more stacks.
So the existing pile would go much further up the driveway, like the same width in height?
Correct. It would be, so we have 2.5 stacks now. There'll be additional 2 stacks.
Approximately like 17 feet long in length?
Yeah, I think they're close to that.
And how high, Tim, would they be then?
We stack them they're probably about 6-7 feet tall when we stack them. It's 6 or 7 sections. So one of the other things, just so the commission is aware, why we don't move them that far is, especially for the sailing dock, the last 4 blocks are ballasted. So there are 2 blocks that are halfway ballasted, and the 2 blocks closest to the water are fully ballasted. So some of those sections weigh upwards of like 1,200 pounds.
Okay. Rob, I just want to acknowledge, I see your hands up, and once the commissioners are done with their questions, we'll entertain other questions as well. Okay. Commissioners, Andrew, are you satisfied with that reply?
So I'm just curious. So we're looking at the existing footprints, or entrance into the buffer going from 17 feet into the 50-foot to about 51 feet from the shoreline. Am I getting that right? Up to the Meadowbrook railing?
So Tim, when we were there, where the docks were stacked, we had to move them back 17 feet to get outside the 50.
Get outside the 50.
Right. So if we shifted the entire pack back, Andrew, we could get outside the 50, even with the new docks.
Okay. If we could get outside of the 50, would that be doable?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, that's why Tim and I went down. I just wanted to have an idea of where it would need to be. So if we shifted the current pack backwards 17 feet and stacked everything behind it, we would be outside the 50 entirely, even with the new dock. Yeah, the only other option, and this is where it comes into, it's off to the side. There's parking available. The only other option is to stack them where the boat trailer parking is at the back of the ramp. But then, originally when the gentleman who had owned that house, who has since passed away, he had requested we not stack them there just to avoid blocking the view of the lake. And where they were, that's why we put them against that rail where they were, because that was the least invasive to just line of sight for anyone.
Gotcha. And with this new placement, this would open up the access to the boat ramp a bit more for people coming in to use it.
So we don't block the boat ramp at all with the docks, as far as there are the parking spots that are on the impervious pavers that are adjacent to the guardrail. But there's the boat and trailer parking. There's the 2 spots that are in front of the snack shack. There's the spots behind the snack shack. We've never had a complaint about parking when the docks are out of the water. And like I said, that boat ramp gets locked from the time the ice hits the lake to the time that the ice goes off the lake. And ultimately, it's the decision of Fish and Game when it gets closed. There is a life jacket requirement once the water gets below a certain temperature. Sometimes they close it at that point, and sometimes they keep it open a little later. They definitely do call us as soon as people start asking for access in the spring, and that's just typically when we unlock it, as long as the ice is out. But that's how it's worked.
Gotcha. I'm much more comfortable knowing that it'll be outside of the 50, but I'm curious to see what Rob has to say as well.
So Andrew, one thing I will note is it's outside of the 50-foot buffer zone of Long Lake. Rob identified in a previous meeting, or maybe it was a submission to us, that there is a hydrological connection coming from Long Lake, or not coming from Long Lake, actually going into Long Lake from an outfall that daylights. It's tough to describe where it actually is without showing the imagery. Let me see if I could pull up the imagery here.
And you all will notice that was in your packet with the letter that Diane Corey submitted based on Rob's email. You'll see it on the last page.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, that is the outfall that was created at the same time as the frog pond was created. So that was created by the state when that whole project was done for rainwater that's coming off of Goldsmith, Meadowbrook, and that east side of the Long Lake neighborhood.
And what is the proximity approximately from that outfall to the storage of the docks?
Maybe 6 feet.
Okay.
I doubt that I could lay down between the docks and that. But yeah, there's the guardrail adjacent to the boat ramp. So that whole project was done, the outfall, the boat ramp, and the frog pond at the same time.
So I'm going to share my screen here, and so you guys can get a better idea of the location of this. So the outfall is back by here. I think you could see the concrete slab, and it drains all the way down here into Long Lake. So although moving the docks further up towards, Lakeview, would move it outside of the 50 foot of Long Lake, it would still be within 50 feet of this drainage area. I guess no matter how far it was moved up, as long as it's still kind of hugging this area.
So we're always going to be in the 50 of one of the two resource areas.
If it's confined to this general area.
I guess my question too, that we had brought up before is, as far as the maps are considered, that area is not delineated as a wetland area on anything. You know, that was a man-made structure that was put in.
But it has a connection. So,
I was just asking that for just knowledge.
Yep, it's actually feeding. So whenever, even if you create it, whenever you're feeding a resource, it's considered a hydrological connection there.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioners, questions on this? So we can.
Yeah, I'm just curious, the tight tank right now, if I'm looking at the map that Tim has up on the screen, is it located anywhere near where the boats are stored? Like, Tim, your cursor, is that where the tight tank is?
No, it's about an inch above that. So where the P-stone is. Yep. So those are actually the boats stacked, Andrew, the white to the bottom of the building there, where the cursor is now.
Mm-hmm.
So that area right there, where the boats are stacked, and you can kind of see where the grass and the P-stone meet. If you go down, like, yep, right there. That's the tight tank right there, Andrew.
Gotcha. Because if anything, I would potentially suggest, like in Rob's letter, maybe we could move the boats to the new site on King Street and maybe move the docks up and over into that area. But I don't know what a tight tank can withstand.
Yeah, I mean, any movement off the property, if we move the boats would probably go in the main parking lot. I mean, they're also not light, and there's transportation costs that go with that. So we don't have, a trailer or anything else that, to move the boats over to King Street. And they would probably, just reading that at 3:55 this afternoon, that stuff would just go in the main parking lot and take up space there.
The main parking lot in Becca Town Hall, or the new?
No, the main parking lot at the beach. We wouldn't move any of those resources from the beach. We don't have the staff or the transportation to do that.
Gotcha.
In the public interest, can you, and I'm just trying to ask here, are you allowed to do that, Tim?
Allowed to do what?
To move the boats for storage in a parking lot? Don't we have to have, for the townspeople, some parking spots open in what you would consider the off season as well?
Yeah, but to the left of the bathhouse, as it sits here, that's where the old deck used to sit. We would just stack them right there.
So it wouldn't be necessarily taking up people's parking spots.
I mean, the same argument could be made for King Street or anywhere else that we put them. We're just getting into that building. I don't even know how many parking spots are required for that particular space.
Okay. Yeah, I was just trying to understand parking.
Yeah. It could be made to work wherever it went. Stacking those on the P-stone, like I said, I don't know what the amount of weight can be put onto those. The other thing is as far as getting things in and out of there, it's easy enough to work with highway, but all of those boulders that are lined up there to prevent cars from driving, so we need to move those before we can drive a loader up there to put dock on top of that.
In terms of like putting, like, let's say we didn't shift the boats over to the parking lot, would this dock material possibly fit as well, or is that just a non-starter?
So just the dock wouldn't fit there. Just so everybody knows, we planted a big maple tree kind of right in the middle of that grass area. So right now, if you were to go down there, all of the boats, the Zodiacs are parked there, the tree is there. we would have to move the boats in order to put the docks there.
Good. Other commissioners, questions? Michael, Ed, Carl, Kyle, I know you're with us again.
So just to summarize that, we're trying to decide where to move those gray things that are by the 50 in the picture there. And, do we want to move them further up in that same line up to, like where the A is to get them out of the 50? That's what our discussion's down to.
Yeah, and I think the other problem though is we have that other resource area nearby as well, the one feeding in.
Right.
So if there was a way to get the docks out of both 50-foot areas, that would be amazing. I just don't know how we can configure it.
Can I ask a stupid question?
Sure.
You can ask any type of question.
These docks are in the water all summer. So they're already part of the 50, part of the 0. So why are we concerned about them being stored where they are?
This was the argument I brought up 2 meetings ago. I don't know why we've continued that. That's my exact viewpoint, Ed. That was why I mentioned that during our discussion. From my viewpoint, if we're putting these in the resource area, I know, so I understand. I think it's on my end, it's more of a paperwork exercise, and we need to find a way to validate Park and Rec submitting a waiver, right? If they're going to be within the 50, then they need to submit a waiver for their order of conditions, right?
Mhm.
I'm sure.
Chase, I'm just moving you over. Okay. Sorry, Chase, we didn't see that you joined us, so Chase is now back with us.
Hey,
Okay.
Chase.
Okay, let's go ahead while we're pondering this. Rob, you're permitted to talk if there's any question you'd like to ask. If not, that's fine as well. I know you lowered your hand.
Okay. I'd like to, if Tim Pearson could put up the map again,
Sure.
I'd just like to clarify of Tim Mikulski. I see the two sets of the docks.
And Rob, before we
with-
do, can you just officially announce your name and your address, please?
Yes, Robert Rounds, 25 Juniper Road.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. So the two sets of the offsite storage right now, as you consider the additional purchases, are you saying there's just going to be 2 additional sections that are going to do the entire lengths that are anticipated to be purchased, or are we basically saying these 2 are going to be now tripled? Because
So you'll have a total of 4 stacks, if not 4.5 max.
Okay, all right, I appreciate that. So to the commissioners then, as I think Andrew articulated, others have as well, the aspect of, I'm thinking that this qualifies from a wetland within the 50, and seemingly, unless it's in the public interest, you come to terms. I don't understand how residents are pretty much challenged to resolve problems inside of 50 or resolve them in a way that doesn't exist. And the last point that I'd like to make is with regard to the visual that you're seeing, how tight it is with regard to the public interest to use that boat ramp. The docks were just put in the water, I don't know, Tim Mikulski can say, but I'd say within the last month, and they'll be removed from the water typically by Labor Day. And yet the off season, the shoulder seasons are used extensively, and just a trailer with a truck, there's just not that many spaces there. So the space that the off season storage of these docks in this area, it's extremely tight. I appreciate Tim Mikulski saying haven't heard complaints, but I'm there quite frequently and see, multiple trailers and boats, and in some ways the space should be open and available, encouraging the use of Long Lake and the boat ramp. And so I appreciate your time. Those are the points I wanted to make in addition to what you've already seen me submitting.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, questions, comments for Tim? So just out of clarity, as this aerial looks, we're looking at 2 sections of docks. And then with, I believe what Rob had just asked, so that there was going to be 4 more that will be added. Is that 4 more stacks or 4 more sections of cubes that represent a dock?
So to clarify, with the square footage that has yet to be purchased, you would have 2 to 2.5 additional stacks, making 4 total, 4.5 total.
Can you define stack? Is one of these?
So each of those, so you see 2 there, that's a stack. So 1 stack, 2 stack. We would have 2 additional stacks, maybe another half stack. So you would have 4 or 4.5 total. If you were to look at these from the aerial with the new purchase, you would see 4 of those.
So the competing.
I want to be clear that commissioners understand that. So what you're looking at now is not going to be representative of what the future will be. So we're kind of splitting hairs whether we move it towards the A, because then we're still doubling the size of those stacks. So
Right.
I think what we're looking at is what we're picturing now, but you're asking us to look down the road for the new purchases as well. Will the new purchases, Tim, have ballasts in them as well, or is it just the end sections that will have the ballast?
So none of the new sections will be ballasted, and that was one of my points I made 2 meetings ago.
Okay.
The section that the Conservation Commission had actually requested and we had talked through that we purchased was for the replacement of the fishing dock off of Lakeshore.
Yep.
You know, that could be something, if it was at your behest, you know, it would be easier to store that over on that parcel that we were suggesting might be a good canoe storage or something like that. So we don't have to bring it all the way over to the boat ramp. You know, there's opportunity for that to have other places.
Is there opportunity for the future stack to be outside of a jurisdictional area?
I mean, anything's possible.
Okay. So I want to be clear, what we're looking at here is for a request for a certificate of compliance. I believe it is what we are looking at and not looking at the future for a request for compliance. But Andrew, can you correct me on that?
So tonight, Park and Rec is essentially looking for an amended order of conditions, right? Basically striking the 50-foot requirement from the placement of the docks in relation to the lake and the wetland.
Right.
I mean, ideally, I mean, it would be great to get these out of the 50. I'm just trying to think a way
So
to
just so everybody's clear, just to kind of give everybody a reference point. So to get out of the 50, the front section of the first dock would really be lined up with the number 1. Just so everybody has a reference point of what that looks like.
That's just out of the Long Lake 50, right? Not
Correct.
of this
Not
new-
out of the drainage swale. Yes.
Moving them to that spot, though, does address what Rob Rounce was just talking about, making it easier to get boat trailers down the ramp, correct?
Yeah, and just so everybody's aware, there's 28 feet from the docks to where the canoes are. There's plenty of room to back a boat trailer down. We don't obstruct any of the actual boat ramp with those docks. It does take up 2 car parking spaces.
Right.
Just so everybody's aware, like each of those sections is a little larger than a car. If you were to park your car there with space to get something out of the back of it, essentially those two dock spaces take up the same amount of space as 2 cars.
Yeah, that's the paver area, right? It has like the concrete blocks, the pavers.
Yes.
So there's typically
Impervious
cars
pavers.
parked there during the normal hours. There's cars parked there. So those would be obstructing space just as much as these docks are.
Is that part of the problem of that whole kind of smooth gray area is access for backing in boat trailers and parking?
Yes, and I actually, when we just did the update with Fish and Game, so the area that's closest to the rock wall, by parcel number 52, we actually just had the boat trailer parking signs reinstalled there. Somebody had stolen them during COVID. So there are 2 signs now that clearly delineate boat trailer parking only. The spots in front of the snack shack, there's 2 parking spaces where the Zodiac is parked right next to where the number 150 is, next to the canoes. And then on a good day, you can fit about 6 cars along that guardrail.
In worst case, you drive around the corner and park in the main parking lot.
Yes, during the off season, anybody can park there. Anybody can park on Lakeshore as well. There's ample parking on Lakeshore and Lake. There's 6 spots.
So we're not really worried about taking up 2 or 3 more parking places with adding those stacks. It's really about moving them away from out of the 50 or away from that other resource area.
Which isn't going to happen because there's nowhere to put them.
Right. So I don't feel comfortable adding 2 more stacks in this resource area. So I would like to have this really focus on what is here and now versus what's going to be in the future. I recognize it's a request for amended order, and I just,
Sarah, if I may,
yeah.
I would, the reason I led with, as far as talking about this, we don't own the new material yet. And like I said, those are not going to be ballasted systems. I think we have a lot more opportunity for where we could stack them and how we could do.
I guess mine was a
it's
point.
Easy. It's easy. Like even if we shifted this all the way back.
Yep. Mine was more of a point of order because I apologize. I don't have the order of conditions in front of me of if that was just for these 2 stacks that we're looking to amend the order. Tim, can you tell me that?
Yeah, I mean, the order is only referencing the docks that were permitted.
Okay.
During that.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure so that we're clear that if we're going to amend this order, it is for what is currently in location.
They don't own the other 2 sets, so why are we talking about something you don't own? When you do, or if you do buy them, you can come back and revisit this very lengthy discussion.
So I know that those docks are basically a guaranteed buy at this point. So I mean, they will happen. So I'm not sure, going forward, are we going to have to amend the order of conditions once again with the new docks included?
No, I think because that will be a new docking system, that's a totally different order of conditions.
Yeah, and to the point that I made earlier, since those aren't ballasted, that's something that would even be easier to move with a loader, and whether they were stacked next to the bathhouse or found something out, that, like I said, we can figure that out. And if that's the behest of the commission is to find a new place, or that can be arranged for.
Can I ask a question, or excuse me here, I guess, clarify one thing. My opinion, so our standard orders with respect to docks say we don't want you to store it in the 50. And that makes a lot of sense to me when you look at the parcels to the south here, right? Storing it in the 50 is on vegetated land. That could have a meaningful impact on the ecological resources. I'm really struggling to understand what resource area impact there is from having these docks stored on an area that's already pavers. Listen, like, we wouldn't permit it to be this way as it is now if we were to revisit this whole thing, maybe. But the fact of the matter is it's pavers, and to me, in this situation, whether we have the docks where they're currently pictured or we move them back, it doesn't change any impact to the resource areas because they're being stored on this paved area. So I'm really struggling to figure out why it matters when there's no resource area impact outside of this 50-foot buffer that we can look at and waive if we so choose.
I think you're the third person to suggest that, Chase.
Anyone in the public have any questions or comments as attendees for this hearing? Commissioners, what are your thoughts? If someone would.
I move that we accept, if that's the right word, the request for amended order of conditions, Long Lake Docks, DEP 204-1001.
I guess, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt or cut you off. Can you clarify what the amended is? And we've had so many different conversations. Are we moving them 17 feet out of the Long Lake resource area? Are we keeping them as they are? What is the actual amendment that we're making, that you're moving it?
I assumed the amended was keeping them where they were, but
so
that's why I'm asking, right?
So Tim, that's a great question, Kyle. Let's go back to our Tim. What is requested in that amendment?
Yeah, so the request would be to change the language within the special condition or within the order of conditions. Currently, it says in the findings that the docks will be stored outside of the buffer zone. So I guess the request would be to amend the order of conditions and state that they would, I guess, striking that language.
So leaving them where they are right now.
That it's okay for them to be stored within a resource area.
Yep.
I mean, if we want
within a buffer zone. They're not actually in the resource area, are they? That's not delineated, so.
Well, they're in the 50.
That's fine. That's very different. I mean, they get used in the resource area.
Currently, they're in the resource area.
Right. That's way too. Okay, I'm sorry. I'd continue.
No,
I will second.
That was what I put out there for the motion.
Okay, I second as motion.
So we have a first and we have a second by Kyle. Andrew?
Roll call. Chase.
Chase Gerbeck, aye.
Kyle.
Kyle Maxfield, aye.
Michael.
Michael Livingston, aye.
Carl.
Carl Melberg, aye.
Ed.
Ed Foltz, aye.
Myself, aye. It's unanimous.
I don't get to vote.
Sorry, Sarah. Your cue tripped over. Sarah.
Sarah Seward, aye.
It's unanimous.
All right. All right.
He's only the boss.
Tim, you're all good. Okay.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you guys for your time. And just so you know, when we do procure the new docks, I will put together a plan and let you guys know exactly where they're going to be stored outside of this area.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just as a point of clarity before I leave, do we need to get a Tim, what did we just do for the walkway? Certificate of compliance?
Yep, you got a certificate of compliance for that. Yep. So that needs to get recorded. Yep.
Okay. Thank you all for your time. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Tim.
All righty. It's 8:35 and we're going to do our 7:45 continued public hearing request for amended order of conditions, Foster Street reconstruction, DEP 204-0991, relocation of leaching catch basins. Who is here to speak to that?
Hello, good evening, Commission members. My name is Aaron Keegan. I'm a project engineer for Fawcett O'Neill, representing the town for this project.
And you are welcome to share your screen if you have something that you would like to put up.
Yes. Do that.
And then, Aaron, if you would like to discuss from our previous meeting what the requests were for you, so you can carry on.
Yes, the previous hearing, that we actually had two requests for the commission. The first was for permission to use herbicides to control and abate invasive plant species. However, upon further review, MassDOT and the project contractor have requested to withdraw the use of herbicides request as an amendment due to the project schedule. They felt they needed to move forward with non-herbicidal methods, including burial and/or removal from the site and disposal in a approved facility for invasives. And so that request is being withdrawn. And that leaves our second request, which was the reduction in the number of leaching catch basins from previous 5 to 1 due to the discovery of high seasonal groundwater that would not allow the installation of the catch basins where they were originally proposed. The one catch basin that we are proposing is in the one location where we did find groundwater to be of a sufficient depth below the surface. In our most recent documents that we submitted a map showing the test pit locations where we looked for groundwater depth.
So, Aaron, would you like to pull that plan back up that you had for us last time? That showed where the 5 were and where the 1 successful is going to be?
Yes. So the screen that I'm sharing now is, can you see the...
No, we don't see. We just have a list of your screens. There's nothing.
Oh, okay.
On review.
I'm sorry, I thought... let's see.
There we go.
Yep. So if you can just do a quick overview of the 5 that were proposed that are now no longer, and then the 1 that is successful to remain.
Okay.
Your request is to go from 5 to 1.
Yes. Okay, so this first location where we're at Foster Street and Taylor Street, this is just a test pit location where we're looking for a possible alternate site. The groundwater there was not deep enough, so there was neither a proposed nor, this is not a site where we can put one, but I just wanted to mention that.
And Aaron, you do have some people that weren't here at the previous. Can you talk a little bit about what you needed for cover in terms of depth and water?
Yes. So let me just go down to, we submitted some details. This might help explain it. The original project had 5 leaching catch basins. This is the MassDOT standard structure. It's 6.5 feet in depth. And in order for these to successfully infiltrate groundwater, you need at least 2 feet of dry soil below the structure for the groundwater infiltration to happen. So the seasonal high groundwater in this case needs to be 8 feet 6 inches deep. That's 2 feet below the structure. Even if we looked at the smallest dry well, or leaching catch basin is another term for it, this is the smallest one that they make that we would be able to procure. This one it's a smaller structure, but it still requires 5 feet 11 inches to be 2 feet below the cement structure. If this is called a mini dry well, if this were used. So we're looking at 5 feet 11 inches as kind of the minimum for this type of groundwater infiltration structure. Going back to the plans, so we're moving on east on Foster Street from Taylor Street. We're at the front edge of 305 Foster Street. So this was the proposed location of leaching catch basin 1, and the groundwater was found to be seasonal high groundwater, 48 inches. So more shallow than the 5 feet 11, even for the smallest leaching basin. Moving on east, or sort of northeast, to location of the second proposed leaching catch basin. This is kind of at the front edge of 295 Foster Street. Groundwater is 38 inches below surface elevation there. So again, more shallow than the 5 feet 11 inches. Moving on to the next spot, we're across the street from 286 Foster Street. This was the proposed location of leaching basin number 3. Results of estimated seasonal high groundwater is 38 inches, again too shallow. Moving on to, we're now across, actually this is inside the MassDOT right of way. That's part of the Route 2 overpass, just east of Balkelly Road. Seasonal high groundwater found to be 34 inches, so again too shallow. And then here we are in the 5th previously proposed location. We're at the frontage of 265 Foster Street. This is pretty close to the railroad track crossing just on the southwest side. Seasonal high groundwater found to be 36 inches. So here we are. Another spot that we checked. We had a test pit. This is actually right across the street from the MBTA property. And a test pit found groundwater 60 inches deep there. That's 5 feet, so not quite deep enough. And then the remaining site where we did a test pit, this is east of the MBTA property and west of Balsam Lane. We did find this spot that was 108 feet deep for the seasonal high groundwater. So we can actually, at this spot, we can fit in the full-size MassDOT standard leaching catch basin. Unfortunately, it's not the number that we were trying to install as part of the maximum extent practicable to meet stormwater standard number 3 for stormwater recharge. It just turns out that the maximum extent practical was not what we thought it was. And again, we regret that we didn't test for seasonal high groundwater during design, but it was felt at the time that the test pits could be rather deep and somewhat invasive to the road that was, open and operating the traffic. So we decided to do it, during the early part of construction. And that's more or less what we submitted. We submitted a letter from a licensed soil evaluator at Mass who determined the groundwater elevations, in addition to the construction details that I shared with you earlier, showing the leaching basins themselves.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. Commissioners have questions? I think it's unfortunate, kind of lesson learned for us, because during the preliminary stages, we really spoke quite vigorously about how wet this area was and is. So, commissioners have questions?
I have a general comment, I guess, but by removing these leaching catch basins, what we're going to do is we're going to further deprive these resource areas on either side of the road of recharge water. We're going to fundamentally change the footprint of the wetlands when we do that. And I think an answer that simply says, nope, we're just going to take the easy route here and switch them out for something that doesn't address that concern is not acceptable.
I'm not sure I understand when we say fundamentally change the footprint of the wetlands. We don't have any direct wetland impacts as part of the project. This was an attempt to provide some extra groundwater recharge.
I understand what you mean. This entire area is lined with wetlands. So the purpose of these is to enhance the recharge so that the wetland complex is in the greater area, right? That's why stormwater standard 3 exists, right? We want to infiltrate as much as we can so that A, we're not running it off, but B, so that we are ensuring that the resource areas in this vicinity that rely upon the groundwater being at the elevation that they are, we're no longer going to be recharging that water. And so it's not necessary that these have to be exactly in a wetland complex. What we're doing is ultimately depriving the groundwater of reinfiltration. We're now going to run this off and discharge it to a surface water body.
Well, it is, yes, I agree with your statement. What I can say is that we're trying to provide the maximum extent practicable with the high groundwater. We're limited with the narrowness of the road layout, and we don't. There really isn't a practical way for us to provide groundwater recharge with the width of the road corridor and the high depth of the groundwater. We don't have space, for example, for some kind of man-made basin, earthen basin. So we're just meeting the maximum extent practicable as a redevelopment project. We're struggling to meet, and this is the best that we think we could do at the time.
You submitted nothing to us except this switching out from recharging catch basins to standard catch basins to support that statement. I appreciate what you're saying, that in your mind, the only feasible alternative is to simply make this change out. What I'm telling you is you haven't substantiated that, you haven't defended that, you haven't explained that, and you haven't justified why you can't meet this another way. What this looks like to me is it's a lot easier to just flip these out than to go through the work to figure out how to achieve this outcome in the long run. And I think here we should require, if you're really going to do this, an alternatives evaluation to figure out how to do this correctly, rather than just take the easy mode change.
Okay. Well, we can certainly, work with the client to see, what more can be done. It's a fairly, to go back to the alternatives drawing board. It's something that can be done, but it is a fairly costly endeavor, which we can pursue if that's what the commission is recommending. But
listen, that's my 2 cents.
Okay.
I'm one of half a dozen people here, but that's what I would prefer to see.
Other commissioners? I know we stated a lot of our concerns at the previous hearing that we were very perplexed with this. So, other commissioners?
Second Chase's comments.
I would agree too.
Yeah, I agree. So, and just to kind of clarify or remind me, Aaron, you're creating additional impervious space from what's there, correct? This road is either getting widened or there's a shared lane that is adding to the volume of or area square footage of impervious area through here.
That's true. So overall, the project adds about 0.6 acres spread out across the 0.7 of a mile corridor. We did submit, as part of the original NOI, a peak rate attenuation analysis for the wetland area at the intersection of Grimes Lane and Foster Street that showed a negligible increase based on the added impervious of the shared use path. But it is true that overall we are adding impervious.
Right.
Any other comments?
I'm just wondering what's happening now. All right, what was adding the impervious, adding the recharging catch basins an attempt to make things better than what we have now, or to mitigate the changes that are going to happen? Because that was my question was going to be, well, where is all the water going to go if it's not going to be going into the recharge basins? Collecting underneath the highway down there, or
it's just going to go into a standard catch basin and then get dispersed wherever the outfall is, wherever this water goes.
Correct.
Right.
So I just wonder still, was this going to be an improvement over what we have now, or a mitigation for what's being changed?
It was originally intended as a partial mitigation to the maximum extent practical to meet stormwater standard number 3.
I
Okay.
think it was a little bit of both, Michael.
I'm sorry?
It's a little bit of both, right? It certainly would be better than what we have there now, but it was required by the stormwater.
Right.
But you've also paved over 0.6 more acres.
Right. Like I said,
so
that's water that's
in
going
that
to be
case,
collected and get discharged somewhere else.
Right. Okay. Aaron, I think that you have heard some of the comments from the commission. Commission, what would we like to do?
Can I just ask a clarification?
Sure.
So is it my understanding, so what's being asked for is some type of analysis that shows the recharge that the proposed basins would have provided and some type of equivalent compensation for that, or demonstration that it can't be done if that's true?
Chase, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, my expectation here is a feasibility evaluation to determine whether or not it can be done. Listen, Aaron, if at the end of the day it truly can't, and I'm not sure that it truly can't, but I'm open to that outcome, then so be it. But I think you need to prove that you can't achieve that recharge. And I think you need to look really hard at what you can achieve.
Okay.
Okay.
And ultimately, my interest, what I'm expressing here is that I do not want to deprive the groundwater of water that feeds the resources in the area. So it's not just a stormwater standard consideration here, right, to reduce flows, but rather a, regional aquifer recharge consideration. So to that end, I think what I'm trying to tell you, Aaron, is if you could tell me, hey, I can't put it in right here, but if I move 2,000 feet up the road, I do have a little room for a catch basin. I think that should be within the scope of your feasibility evaluation.
Outside of the project limits?
I think everybody'd prefer you keep it inside of the project limits. But
Okay. I mean, we can certainly, do more test pits. Possibly, I'll have to talk to the client about, and the design team or the construction team. What part of the reason why I showed the map tonight, you can see that the test pits that we did sample are fairly, the coverage is fairly complete. I mean, we have on every page, which is typically, about 300 feet, we have a test. So I'm not entirely hopeful that we'll find space to replace the 4 basins that we weren't able to install, just based on the results that we're seeing already. But that's something we can try to prove it in a more convincing way. There's a possibility that what I'm saying is I'm skeptical that we'll be able to find enough spaces to install the other 4, given the results that we've already seen.
Understood. And I don't think you should restrict yourself to answering this question just with recharging catch basins, right? That the overall objective here is to not deprive the greater wetland complexes in this area of any more water than we need to. How you guys want to evaluate that, that's up to you. On top of that, if you ultimately do a reasonable job of a feasibility study and conclude it just isn't possible, then maybe we're in a different place. But I'm not sure that we've done our homework yet to justify that.
Okay.
So, Aaron, we meet again on June 24th and July 8th. What would you anticipate would be best for you and your client?
Well, I'd like to be on for the next meeting. If we're not able to
continue you to June 24th, and if it looks like that's not going to work for you within that time frame, just let Tim know accordingly.
Okay, we will. I just one last statement, if I may. So I just want to make sure that we're not being held to a more strict standard than the original, permitting. We, as a redevelopment project, maximum extent practical. I don't know that we'll be able to show that we can recharge all the groundwater from the additional impervious, and we weren't doing that in the original set of plans. But we can certainly look at, can we replace the recharge that would have been provided by the leaching catch basins that we could not install?
I think that's a reasonable basis to begin your evaluation.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, Aaron.
All right. Thank you.
Also to decrease the additional impervious, basically make the road smaller.
Oh.
I'm afraid that that's not a practical consideration at this time. We've already minimized the actual road width per MassDOT and road safety standards. The shared use path is also the minimum standard at 10 feet. And I'm afraid that we wouldn't be able to practically change the design to that extent at this time.
Okay, we're going to carry on. Thank you, Aaron. Have a good night.
All right, thank you.
8:57, we're going to go ahead and open up our 8 o'clock continued public meeting. Request of determination of applicability, 8 Cricket Lane, removal of 6 trees. I think Kyle and Tim have been out. Who's here to speak to that?
I'm promoting Linda Turner right now.
Okay. Linda and Deb. Linda, so just so you know that you are muted and your camera is off, if you could at least unmute yourself and give us your name and address, that would be great.
Sorry, I retired before Zoom was a thing, so.
That's okay. If you can, welcome back. If you can just state your name and address and we'll go from there.
Linda Turner, 8 Cricket Lane.
Okay, great. And Tim, I believe Tim and Kyle, or you went out to the site?
We did. Yep, it was me and Kyle. We took a look at the trees, and the location of where the proposed replantings would be. One of the things we did notice while we were out there was a dock, and I've since talked with Linda and Deborah about the need to get that in or license as part of this application. So Linda, I think it was Linda, sent over the specifications that we would typically look for when licensing the docks.
Okay, great. And how did the trees look like? We're removing 6 trees.
Correct.
Kyle, did you want to?
Sure. I had no concerns. They were more, the one, there's definitely one that had been struck by lightning and was starting to split, starting to lean towards the house even. And then the remaining 3 similar were all making that inward climb or tilt towards the house. There's still a significant amount of vegetation and trees all around that area, but this seemed pretty straightforward to me.
Okay. And vegetation, revegetation, replanting?
I can pull up the plan if it would be helpful, Sarah.
You just have the inventory that you'd like to just tell the commissioners?
Yeah, I believe it's and Linda, correct me if I'm wrong, is it 6 river birches proposed to be replanted?
Correct.
Okay. Commissioners, I know we had some discussion with this at the previous hearing. Does anyone have any questions?
What kind of trees are we going to be losing?
It's 2 pine trees and 4 oak trees.
Linda, any thoughts on trying to put back any of those oaks?
We had not considered that. We have a lot of trees. We thought the birch would be a nice addition, but.
Okay. Kyle, Carl, do you have thoughts on trees?
I'm looking at the trees to be removed. As the circumferences, I think, must be wrong.
I used a tape measure.
It's the circumference, not the diameter.
Oh, it's not the diameter. Okay, gotcha.
I'm gonna do some math.
Yeah. Like, wow, that's a big tree.
Yeah, so these are the pines right here, number 1 and number 2, and these are the 4 oaks.
Yeah, there was a number 6 and 4. It was they're basically already leaning on 2 other trees.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, they'll be coming down in another major storm, I would think.
Because I have one question, one comment here. The question is, Ms. Turner, have you given us plans, and if you haven't, I haven't seen them, I apologize, that explain like what you're going to do in terms of sediment and erosion controls? I imagine in this area, you're going to have some heavy equipment here. We're going to disturb the slope. And I want to make sure that we're not going to get like a bunch of sediment runoff off of this when you're doing this. Have you given us anything like that to make sure we're being protective of Spec Pond?
Yeah, Tim actually has all of the application stuff that we did, and we're not going to be doing any stump grinding.
Okay.
We're just going to take them off, fairly low, and then leave them as is.
Sure.
I think you actually mentioned you wanted to keep them as high as you could, right, without them causing any danger.
I guess what I'm getting at is particularly those 2 pine between the house and Spec Pond. I do want to make sure we're going to have equipment in here of some type. It's going to disturb the area. My expectation is that we've got some type of sediment and erosion control, and we've got a plan to revegetate this as quickly as possible.
So Chase, I'm not a tree expert by any means. My gut and my instinct with how they're going to have to deal with this is there's no access to any of these trees really. They're going to have a crane
come in with a crane over top.
I think they're going to they're going to go top down.
Yeah, that was the discussion with Tree Masters, was a crane.
Okay. That alleviates some of my concerns. Maybe I didn't appreciate the grades here.
Yeah, it's definitely not the driveway is kind of where it says a cricket lane. Any Tree Masters, and that's a lower spot. You have to kind of climb your way up to the backyard.
Okay. Fair enough. I think nonetheless that our expectation, Ms. Turner, will be that you to the extent that there are disturbed areas, we want to get those seeded and things like that as quickly as we can thereafter. The other comment that I want to make here is that I do think we should ask the applicant to replant at a 2-to-1 ratio. The basis for that is that if we ask the applicant to replant at a 2-to-1 ratio, and typically you don't always get 100% survival. If we get 75% survival, then we know we've replaced the trees and we don't have to have a long drawn out sort of evaluation process. If we only replant 1-to-1, then we're going to come back and we're going to expect something to be replanted if it dies. So I think asking for a 2-to-1 replacement here is a reasonable way of sort of striking a balance.
Okay. There's a lot of trees on the property, but we can do our best to do a 2-to-1 ratio.
Well, and as I said before, I'm just one of a half dozen members here. It wouldn't be the first time everybody else told me to shut up and go home. So,
Kyle and Kim, a quick question: would this be an area that would be suitable for different type of bushes or berries to find a type of a mix, or is it so heavily canopied that it wouldn't work?
I would think that a bush or shrub might have a better chance in some areas of their property rather than trees.
Okay.
Like you said, everywhere around this house is wooded.
Chase, would you be okay if we started to kind of do a mix in planting there?
Yeah, absolutely, especially based on the perspective of folks who have seen it on the ground.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Linda, you could probably find anywhere else. It doesn't have to be where the trees are coming down, but anywhere else on your property to kind of mix in some other vegetation.
And so, Linda, you could submit something to Tim outlining. So if you're taking 6 trees, you would replace with a minimum of 6 trees, and then look at a diverse planting of perhaps other bushes or or berries or something that would help in that area as well.
Okay.
And my sense is I would be comfortable going forward tonight and just having that be something that Tim, as a conservation agent, reviews and agrees to.
Yep,
Yep,
for
I agree
sure.
with that.
Okay, so this is a request for a determination of applicability. Who would like to talk to this?
I'll make a motion that the commission issue a -3 determination for 8 Cricket Lane for the removal of 6 trees with the aforementioned planting condition. And does this require a waiver for safety, Tim? Since every tree is within 40 feet?
It would require a waiver. I can check the application. I thought
We have a waiver.
we do have a waiver. Okay.
Yeah, we have a waiver, and it references that safety hazard as the basis for compliance with the bylaw.
Perfect. So with the waiver for safety.
Second.
All right, roll call vote. Ed.
Ed Foltz, aye.
Kyle.
Kyle Maxfield, aye.
Chase. Oh, Chase, you're on mute.
Chase Fairbank, aye.
Carl.
Carl Melberg, aye.
Michael.
Michael Livingston, aye.
Sarah.
Sarah Seward, aye.
Myself, aye. It's unanimous.
And Ms. Turner, just for clarification, we just voted to give you what you're looking for. It was a negative determination, but that's actually what you're asking for.
Thank
Just
you.
just so you
That was good news.
understand.
It was good news. Yeah.
Because negative didn't sound good to me.
No,
Appreciate it.
we're granting what you're asking for.
Okay, thank you and good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, it's 9:08. We're going to open the 8:15 continued public hearing notice of intent 65 Bruce Street, DEP 204-1016, construction of an addition and installation of a septic system.
I'm promoting John and Randy here right now.
Just so the commissioners aren't freaking out for the time, the next 3 are postponed behind this. So, forgot to tell you.
That was going to be a really nice surprise. I mean, it's still a nice surprise, but you were to make everybody's night. You just waited.
So, okay, 65 Bruce Street.
Let's see, unmute. All right, so let's try that again. Good evening, this is John Boardman. How are you tonight?
Good,
Can
thank
you hear me?
How are you? You are able to share your screen if you would like.
All right, thank you, Sarah. Can you see a plan in front of you?
Not yet.
Let's try that one more time.
Oh, it's loading. There you go.
Modern technology.
Okay.
So we met with you at your last meeting. We had revised the addition location. We had provided some dry wells on site, and we had provided a planting plan. At the end of that meeting, we had a couple of do-outs. One of them was to adjust the erosion control to basically match that 50-foot buffer zone, because we had moved all of the construction work out of it. So the plan that's been submitted, we have the erosion control following the 50-foot buffer zone in this location. You can see the proposed addition is again outside. There was some concern that contractors working on site might sort of stockpile and make a mess within the buffer zone. So again, we took that erosion control barrier line and just basically plopped it right on top of that 50-foot buffer zone in this location. And then the last due out was there was again concern about stockpiles, so I added a couple of notes to the plan, one sort of right here, right in the middle, that hopefully a contractor can't possibly miss, that stockpiles get moved outside the buffer. And it was also included in the standard construction sequencing that all stockpiles need to be outside the 100-foot buffer zone, or material needs to be removed from the site. So that plan was submitted to Mr. Pearson and is part of the application. And I think that was the basic do out for the civil plan. I'm happy to answer any questions with that. And then I think Mr. Miller is on the line. He was working on some planting plans, and he could probably address that if there aren't any questions on the civil.
Okay. Any questions? If not, let's move into the planting plans.
Randy, are you around?
Randy, you're actually muted, just so you know.
Good evening.
Hi there. Welcome. Can you just bring us up to date, pardon me, with planting plans, please?
They are submitted. I believe Tim has them. I don't have the ability to put them on the screen.
Okay.
I can pull them up here.
Yep. So Tim can do that for you.
Just give me 1 second.
Would you like to just go through kind of narrative of what your thoughts were from the last meeting and then how you've revised that?
So from the last meeting, it seemed like there was more of a push for actual trees. So with this new revised plan, I've incorporated more trees. It's almost a 2-to-1 ratio. They are outside of the 50-foot buffer. At this time, don't feel comfortable planting any trees within the area of the septic system or the backup septic system in case I have to do any repair work to the wall, or if we have to go ahead and start construction of the backup system, I'll be in the same predicament again with trying to replant trees.
Yep. So Tim, thank you for sharing that. You can see that they've added significantly more than previous. Any commissioners have any questions on this new tree planting plan?
And I never heard of a Sun Valley red maple. I mean, I know Acer rubrum is red maple, but Sun Valley.
It's a cross between the sunset tree and a red maple. It's a little bit smaller in diameter. It doesn't grow as high, just to keep it out of any type of the telephone lines, the electrical lines do run on that side of the property. So just to minimize any type of effect they would have with the electrical lines.
And the green giant, I never heard of that one either.
They're very prevalent.
What's the common name for it? Is it green giant?
It's the common names listed on it.
It's a type of arborvitae.
Okay, does anybody else have any other questions with the engineer and the plan and the planting plan? We appreciate you coming back and making these. I think we've come a long way. Yep. Commissioners?
I think that covered it, doesn't it?
I did have one residual question here. The reserve area, it looks like we're taking trees out of the reserve area right now. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Do we need to take trees out of the reserve area right now? I understand we may someday.
I believe that we should, just for the effect that if there's going to be encroachment with the trees that are there, and there are several pines that are broken and are falling. And again, 10 years from now, if I have to do any work over there, I would just like to have it done and the question taken out.
I guess the reason I asked that is it appears based on your list here that trees 11 and 12, there's not any notations that there's any health issues with them. My preference would be those are trees within the 100-foot buffer zone. I understand that they may need to come out someday. I don't see a need to take them out right now. And I would be, I think, comfortable writing in a condition to recognize in perpetuity that if the reserve area does need to be constructed, that when we looked at this, we were comfortable with the ultimate removal of trees 11 and 12. But I just don't see a justification for taking trees out of a buffer zone when there's no construction that's going to happen right there.
I don't feel comfortable with that because if those trees fall, they're going to fall on the septic system that already will be new and in place. And if there's damage done to the septic system, then I'm replacing a septic system.
Am I still on? Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Sarah, I guess the only comment I would make is 11 and 12 are two large white pines. And it's been my experience is that when you remove trees adjacent to and around the large white pines, oftentimes that they get exposed to increase in wind and increase in weather, and oftentimes they end up getting damaged or knocked down. They don't survive once they're no longer in a forested situation. So that may be part of the consideration here. We're going to be clearing a significant area for the main system. The two large lone pines directly adjacent to it may not survive post-construction.
Okay. Any commissioners have
Oh,
comments?
yeah, good. I said one quick comment on the tree removal. Are all these trees actually damaged? I mean, it seems kind of weird that they would all be split trunk.
They are all
Same area.
What I mean by split trunk is almost above shoulder level, they branch off. So split means that they branch off at a very low part of the tree, and they are sharply split or sharply branch.
So split trunk's not saying they're damaged. Split trunk's simply saying there's a fork.
Correct.
I don't know many.
I don't know that we've ever allowed someone to take healthy trees down because of the outside chance that they could fall and damage a septic system. Like that would be a very new justification for us to allow people to take trees out. And I see at least 5 trees here that I don't understand why they're being removed. I get 1 through 9. I get it. Don't love it. I get it. 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14.
13 and 14, the arborist came in. They're very high, and he believes that they could have potential to fall in the house. So that was also submitted as well.
Oh, well, white pines are extremely flexible. They take a ton of wind. I'm kind of agreeing with Chase.
Listen, if it's the arborist's opinion that 13 and 14 have to come down, that's fine, but I would expect replanting in those areas then. Essentially, what I don't want to see happen here is this is a vehicle to take a buffer zone and turn it into lawn.
Correct.
And that's my ultimate fear. So if it is the arborist's opinion that 13 and 14 need to come down, I would expect replanting in the areas of 13 and 14. And I'm really not comfortable with 10, 11, and 12.
And you can also renaturalize with a lower growing. Doesn't have to be trees. It can be shrubs. It can be other things as well.
I mean, that's fine. There are plenty of invasive species that are over there right now. Sure.
Commissioners, what are your thoughts on the allocation of trees for removal?
I agree with Chase. I don't feel comfortable. I mean,
So we've noted that 13 and 14 have been noted by the arborist. Are you willing to allow those to be removed?
Have we heard anything from? Do we have something in writing from the arborist?
Tim?
Yeah, we do have an arborist note here. I can pull that up.
Thank you. Yep, top one.
But the arborist the arborist can't be the company removing the trees. I've noticed that from another application that came in. If the tree masters has the contract to remove the trees, I don't think that's appropriate to evaluate the tree.
But this is signed by two separate certified arborists.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, Carl. I think we should be careful there, though, because we haven't formalized a policy that says that. I'd be more than happy to ultimately do that, but I don't think we've ever formalized it.
And
we haven't formalized it, but we've definitely
on
had.
this,
we
if you
did
read
enforce
this,
it for someone, was it Debar's trees, where we had him get an independent arborist?
so
We definitely had a third
if
party.
you read this letter, it doesn't specify specific trees. So it talks about due to their size, location, and species characteristics, these trees present a significant hazard. But it doesn't.
Removal of all trees. I guess he's referring to all trees on the plan.
See, that's the point. The company taking the trees down is evaluating, and they just.
Okay, so what would you like to do so we can give guidance here?
So I would just like to go through with what the plan that I have.
Yep, okay. Let's go back, Tim.
So are we saying this plan as noted minus trees 10, 11, and 12?
So
No, I would like the commission to vote on what I have proposed.
Tim, you've been out and looked at these trees. What are your thoughts?
I can't say I've looked specifically at trees. I think 10, 13, and 14. They're under, Randy, correct me if I'm wrong, 13 and 14, those are in a canopied area, right? That's not existing lawn.
Correct. Everything over there is canopy. There is no existing one.
And is 10 as well or no?
I have to blow it up.
Yeah, 10's in the middle of the woods. I mean, basically the entire site is the woods with the exception of the area adjacent to the house. If you take a look at the plan you've got on the screen, you can see there is the tree line is shown on that plan. It comes down behind the existing system, just inside 13, 14, continues up to the shed and basically continues up to the street. So that whole area south of that, plan south, is completely wooded. And that's, yeah, so it's all within the existing canopy currently. I mean, the majority of the site is entirely wooded.
Right, but I believe, if I remember right, this general area here is a little more open and accessible than this area with these trees.
Yeah, agreed. And I think at our last meeting, Randy had indicated that 13 and 14 would be a situation where they'd be coming in with a crane, hooking up to the tree, cutting it, leaving the stump, and then picking the tree out. I believe that was the discussion at the last meeting. I suspect a similar situation with 10. I don't know what their plan would be for 11 and 12, but
all the trees are going to be lifted by a crane.
And I wasn't really commenting on that in regards to access, but more so in respect to what Sarah was saying with the threat of enlarging the footprint of the existing lawn. I wouldn't worry about that too much with 13 and 14 as I would, this general area, just because it's more open and accessible and less sloped.
So you can correct me if I'm wrong, the Wetland Protection Act doesn't restrict or prevent the removal of trees within the buffer zone. And I'm not sure at the current time your local bylaw prohibits the removal of trees within the buffer zone. Obviously, we don't want to remove trees that are unnecessary, and we don't want to remove trees that would cause an impact to the wetlands, but the property owner does have a right to remove trees. Am I incorrect?
We don't have it currently in the bylaw. It's extremely important to us to protect as many trees in the town as we possibly can.
Which is consistent with the Wetlands Protection Act, right? Like the Wetlands Protection Act doesn't say you may or may not remove trees. It's part of the considerations associated with resource area impacts. And so I think
I'm just saying it's not a prohibited activity.
Strictly speaking, not a prohibited activity. And that's,
thank you.
And to be clear, right, I think that's why we're not talking about trees 1 through 9, right? What we're talking about are trees 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14 that are not necessary to be removed, at least some of them, and there's a little uncertainty as to which trees the arborist note is referring to. But even if it is referring to 13 and 14, I think my personal take is if those really are a threat to the house and they need to come down and there's a need to replant those, I can get my head around that. I still come back to really struggling with 10, 11, and 12 because they don't need to come out. And I think there is an interest in under the Wetlands Protection Act in maintaining them as long as they don't need to be removed for this project.
Understood. I appreciate your opinion and appreciate your input on that.
What is just out of curiosity, what is the proximity to the edge of the wetlands on 13 and 14? I'm trying to read the scale. To the closest flag.
If you give me a second, I can look at it on CAD. Well, you can see the 50-foot buffer zone there. So 13 and 14 are probably what, 30 and 35 feet, something like that. 35 and 40 feet off the wetlands. They're clearly within your no disturb zone. So
that would require a waiver.
We had submitted a waiver originally that was more based on the construction of the addition on the other side of the property. We could certainly revise the paperwork if necessary to include the 2 trees that are within that buffer zone. And you're correct, you don't have that waiver currently tonight, but it could be provided easily to staff.
So, Sarah, if I may, Mr. Miller, that part of this comes back to, I think you've heard the concerns we have with these trees. I think a few minutes ago, though, you said you would like us to vote on what has been proposed. And I want to be clear, that's your right to ask us to make that vote. I think we're missing some information that would allow us to have everything that we need here, but that doesn't mean you can't ask for a vote. So I would like to ask you what your appetite is here for considering trees 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14, or asking for a vote right now.
Well, what is the other information that you're missing?
Waiver.
Yeah, we're missing a waiver. We're missing an understanding of whether or not trees 13 and 14 are those referenced by the arborist.
Those are referenced. Unfortunately, when I spoke and also emailed, that did not, I specifically had requested that they reference those. And in this email that I received while I've been in training in Fort Drum for the last 2 weeks. So I received the email after the fact and submitted that. So I've had no way really to get anything done at home since being away.
So this particular letter says the site contains 3 white pines.
Correct.
When you look at your list, there's many white pines.
Correct. And that was with the directive or the direction that I gave for the arborist. There was 3 trees. The 13, 14 that are within the buffer zone that I would want him to indicate, because it was expressed on site that those needed to come down. But they didn't clearly get indicated on that letter.
So
I think Mr. Miller is interested in hearing the commission's opinion from the individuals of the commission. I'm not sure. I've done with other commissions, and I've done with planning boards and ZBA boards, straw poll of the commission to get an indication of the feeling of the members. I don't know if that's something that this commission is familiar with or is interested in doing. That might allow us to get an understanding of whether this is something that can move forward tonight, or whether it's something that needs to be revised without necessarily having a denial or an approval, and therefore the necessary appeals that would follow.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Boardman. It's certainly your prerogative to ask for a straw poll. It's up to the commission if they wish to accept that. Carl, I think you had a question, perhaps?
yeah, I'm just trying to look at the tree planting again. Under like each one of those, like I'm having trouble reading, like under white dogwood, is that 4 to 5? What does that say? I can't read it.
Feet planting.
4 to 5 feet planting. So 1 dogwood, correct? So
each. Go ahead.
No, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's only a total of 7 trees.
No, each color that you see there, each individual circle is one distinct tree that I'm planting.
Right. So the 7 trees that you're planting.
So you have, but then you have the green. So you'll look at all the green giants. So there's 8, 12.
I see the green giants, but now I'm thinking.
But now look at the lower left where you have the spruce, which are the dark gray. So that's another 3 there. So,
I mean, Carl, you're considering the arborvitaes to essentially be shrubs, not trees, right?
I'm considering arborvitaes. Basically, to me, it looks like you're building a fence of arborvitaes, which, I don't think habitat-wise they really give a whole lot besides a buffer fence. Especially when they're that close together, they're all just going to grow together. But that's, that was just my quick, look at what we have here.
Okay, so you have what looks like 2 dogwoods and 3 red maples.
There's 4 dogwoods. There's 2 different varieties of dogwoods.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we will go back to what would the commission like to do? You have Chase has reiterated to Mr. Miller what his request was. He's asked for a vote. Engineers asked for a straw poll. It is up to the committee members what they would like to do. If we want to base it on what is being presented to us tonight. I will only do a straw poll if the commission wishes to do so.
I think that would be a productive thing. So.
Okay.
All right. Should we do a straw poll then?
Thank you, Andrew.
Sure. Michael.
From what I'm hearing, I would vote nay.
Ed?
I would probably go aye.
Kyle?
I think I'm leaning towards nay. Those 2 trees in the reserve area being my concern.
Oh, sorry, Kyle. Carl?
I would vote nay. We try and be consistent as we can, even though we don't have anything in our bylaw. We're still trying to be as consistent as we can with tree removal. And there's been other sites that we've just not denied, but we have, not allowed people to remove certain trees. So I'm going to say nay.
Sarah?
I think based on what is presented today, I'd rather see a robust planting, but in lieu of not having a specific waiver tonight that accounts for those two other trees, if put to a vote, I would vote nay.
Okay, and myself, I would just look for that that additional waiver, for safety or whatever the applicant so chooses, just for those additional trees as well. And Chase?
No, I'm going to throw you guys a curveball here, but if you forced me to vote right now, I would probably, against my better judgment, probably vote in favor of it. And the basis for that is the things that I think are the most important, the movement of the construction out of the 50-footer. 50-foot was done. I don't know. Maybe that's easy to say when the vote doesn't count. At the end of the day, this would be an easy yes for me if we address trees 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14.
Right.
I completely agree with that.
Right. But as it's presented at this particular time.
So, Sarah,
yep, go ahead.
No, I was just wanted to get a summary on that numbers. I was trying to scribble here on my paper, but
Okay.
is that a 3-2 or I forget?
I think you went down 3-4.
So
I've lost track of myself.
And my understanding is
let's keep this going. What is the prerogative? Are you asking for a vote or not a vote?
Can I just clarify, Littleton has a local bylaw so that any appeal would be not only to DEP, but to Mass Superior Court?
That is correct. And there is work within the 50, so it would appeal to both.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Miller, I think that's your call as to whether you would like to proceed at this point or whether you would like to try and come to an agreement on some planting plans.
I think the planting plan, I don't know how much more robust I can go on the planting plan. If it's about trees 11 and 12, again, if they come down and ruin the wall or the septic system, now I'm out $46,000 on a septic system. It is, I don't know.
I mean, is the commission willing to allow those trees to be removed with sufficient replanting? Is that a situation, or are we at an impasse here?
The replanting doesn't get us where we want to go.
I think we still have to discuss a waiver, but the waiver's not been presented to us.
So we hung up on the waiver, or is it the robust, like, tree planting? Because there's there's two different things that are being discussed. So if it's the waiver, then we can go ahead and go through with the waiver.
Robust is the wrong choice of words.
Well, that's what was put out.
Well,
that was one of my words. Yes, thank you.
So it's the wrong choice of words for that kind of a planting plan. We have 16 arborvitaes and replace a tree. That's not right. In my mind, that's not robust. That's just putting something on there to have something on there.
But robust was the word that I used, asking for it to be enhanced, meaning I wished for something to be enhanced more.
Oh, that's different. That's totally different.
We're getting into semantics now, so
yeah. So Randy,
going.
Randy, I'll be blunt here. At the moment, they probably have the right to deny this if they feel that's appropriate, because they do not have the waiver request. And that is simply a matter of paperwork and semantics, but they will win in court because they do not have the paperwork requesting the removal of the trees within the 50-foot buffer zone. If you would like to keep that same planting plan and resubmit a waiver that lists that, we can have the same argument at the following meeting, and then that removes their grounds for denial.
That's good. We'll go through with that then.
Okay, with your permission, we will continue to June 24th. Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Okay, we're going to go back to our administrative discussions. Discussion conservation parcel U 17-208-0. Tim?
Yeah, give me 1 second here. Where we left off with this was Parks and Rec proposed an idea of I guess they've had some requests from the public about having an area where there could be racks for canoes and kayaks, and so the idea would be that that Parks and Rec would put the racks on this parcel and the revenue generated by the dues for the members of the public that pay to use these racks would go towards lake management or Clean Lakes Committee work. Where we left off was commissioners were going to take a drive by the parcel and get a better understanding of what they thought.
Well, but I don't think because we discussed that, I don't think the commissioners that are, did everybody get that understanding that everyone was supposed to do that?
No. I have to tell you from my perspective, it doesn't matter if I drive by, I'm dead set against this.
Okay, I appreciate your opinion.
Yeah, I go by the site just about every day, and I have heard various concerns about, not only safety, creating a blind spot around the corner on Lake Shore and Lake, the storage of the materials affecting the maintenance of the site, potentially creating a hazard for families walking down the street. There's no sidewalks. As well as security for the boats. If we're charging people rent, we have cameras down there, and potentially if something happens, are we liable if a boat goes missing? So I just have a lot of concerns about using. I like the idea. It's just I don't know if this is the right place for it.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else have comments?
I don't recall where are the boats being stored now? Are there none there and this is a new place, or are they now being stored someplace else in the area and this is hopefully a better choice?
So we have Saul who's raised his hand. I'm gonna allow him to talk to that.
Yeah, good afternoon, Saul Marini, 149 Hartwell. I'm also chair of the Park and Rec Commission. We've had requests. So these would be racks for residents who currently store their boats at home, drive them down, use either the parking lot at Long Lake, the parking spots on Lake Shore, or the boat ramp to launch their kayaks into the lake there, and have an interest in not having to do that load and unload, and be able to keep them a little closer to the water for convenience.
Just out of curiosity, Saul, how many racks are you thinking to accommodate how many boats is my first question. And then would they be driving on the road and then walking the boats onto the property, or are they thinking of driving onto the property to unload onto the racks?
No, I think you would. I mean, so I don't think we've defined a number. I think we would start small and see what the demand is. As far as I think you would, these are all, car toppable sort of kayak hand carry things. So it would be, park on Lake Shore the first time to put the boat on the rack, and then it would be walk across and launch from the proposed fishing dock there.
And who would own the racks?
In this case, I think Park and Rec would own the racks and essentially, lease the space is the concept. Or at least a rack slot with lots of to Andrew's point, lots of disclaimers and waivers about, it's at your own risk. It's, there is not security. You're responsible for your own storage or securing it to the rack and that sort of thing.
And would it be a lottery system to how someone would be able to procure such a spot?
Correct.
I think we do a lot of things as a conservation commission to maximize the public's ability to safely and with minimal impact access our natural resources. I see this as part of that. I'm not going to die on the hill if everybody else opposes it, but if we started with 1 rack to see how it goes and make sure everyone is behaving responsibly, or 2 racks, whatever a small number would be, I would think that would be a reasonable thing to do. I understand there are some challenges and constraints here that could prove that to be a poor choice, but I think it's worth exploring.
I think my only challenge is impact to that land.
There's no exploring here. The minute you let one in there, that
Yeah.
land will no longer ever be the same. We will have forever changed it for the negative, in my opinion, but that's my opinion. So whether we start with 1 rack or we start with 10 racks or whatever we do, you're going to have foot traffic, you're going to have everything that's there will be gone. It'll be, or changed, not to be so dramatic, it will be changed forever in my opinion, a negative way.
I agree that it will be changed negatively.
And so this was kind of on the agenda as more of a, take your guys' temperature. Like, is this a non-starter? Is this something that we want to, talk about? So if it's something you guys are open to, and you want to talk further about, specific.
I would make a motion that have people drive by, put it on as a discussion item now that we've had our first discussion, have a second discussion and let people process the comments that we've heard tonight.
Sure. And just as a clarify for myself and make sure I'm thinking of the right space, this is the lot that's used for or the parcel that's used for parking for the triathlon?
Yes. Yeah. And that's once a year.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So we will let you know when we have another discussion. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. Thanks.
Thank you, Saul.
Alrighty. Well, Tim and I have some good news.
Very good news.
In regards to Assistant Conservation Agent appointment vote, we have Lauren, and I don't know how to pronounce her last name, Redosh, R-E-D-O-S-H, that has accepted an offer from the town. So we recognize it's still preliminary. You have to do background checks and such. It is a 40-hour week. I would like to make a motion that we would vote for her appointment as the Assistant Conservation Agent to work with Tim and all of us. And I welcome any questions you might have when she's formally accepted, well, formally gone through all the motions and all the hoops and jumps from the town. I think we would have her come in and introduce her to us online. Chase, anything else procedurally outside of the vote?
I don't think so. I think your disclaimers are important, right? Like with everything looks good, no reason to think otherwise, but.
So we have more than step 1 done. We have been asked to take a formal vote. So I would like a motion that we make a formal vote to accept Lauren Redosh as our new Assistant Conservation Agent, subject to all background checks and everything else that the town desires.
I'll move that the Littleton Conservation Commission appoint Lauren Redosh as our Assistant Conservation Agent, pending approval of background checks and other administrative items.
Second.
Roll call vote. Carl.
Over guy.
Ed.
Ed Foltz, aye.
Kyle.
Kyle Maxfield, aye.
Chase.
Chase Gerbeck, aye.
Michael.
Michael Livingston, aye.
Sarah.
Sarah Seward, aye.
Myself, aye. It's unanimous.
Tim and Sarah, you guys ran a really nice process there, and I think you should be commended for the amount of work you did, as well as the HR team who really, I think, put a lot of effort into cultivating a good group of candidates.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
so, like,
Thank you for doing that for
groups.
us.
Thank you.
I agree.
Have we missed anything on this agenda? I know that the last three have postponed.
I have hopefully a quick administrative item that I want to run by you guys. The highway department is going to be submitting applications for the Frog Pond dredging, as well as the walkway and the invasives work. And their lean is to do it as two separate notices of intent instead of combining it all into one. Wanted to run that by you guys to make sure that's okay with you. And then if that's okay with you, I would also confirm with DEP that's all right with them. The only reason why I ask is because it's all happening on the same parcel. So I want to make sure everything's squared away going into this process with DEP specifically too.
Is there a reason why they are making that preference of two?
I believe it's the area of disturbance cumulative with both those projects would require additional permitting at the state level.
You don't think DEP will see that?
And that's why I wanted to confirm with them too.
I mean, I don't feel like I have a dog in this fight. It's going to be a little redundant. What I would ask is if they choose to submit to and we're good with it, that they don't make us have like serial discussions on the same topics, and alternating meetings or something like that. In other words, I don't want it to be inefficient and painful for us.
Yeah, no, I agree.
But from a Wetlands Protection Act perspective, I think we could ensure the protectiveness of the work for the resource areas in either context.
Yeah, so Tim, see what DEP says.
Sure. Okay. That's all I had.
Okay. Anybody else have anything else? It is now 9:53. May I have a motion to adjourn, please?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, roll call vote. Michael.
Michael Livingston, aye.
Carl.
Tom our guy.
Ed.
Ed Foltz, aye.
Kyle.
Max Verde.
Chase.
Chase Carey guy.
Sarah.
Sarah Seward, aye.
Myself, aye. It's unanimous. We're adjourned.